This document would have you thinking that if you stepped outside your front door in New York City in the 1980s, you were taking your life into your own hands.
Were you not?
I don't know, but I don't think it was as bad as they want us to think it was.
I don't know.
Okay, you were here.
No, we've just heard it a lot. Like I can't believe we didn't see the footage of that TV in the
TV
river
in the Hudson,
again.
I know. You know what we did see, though?
What?
Jillian Pensavalle!
Patrick Hines.
Ba-da-da.
I fall for it every time. I'm like, what did we see?
It's my favorite thing. Joe Mama.
Joe Mama.
Fam, don't forget to join us on Patreon. You know, every single week you get a full ad-free bonus episode. We have over 400 full ad-free bonus episodes for you to download and binge right this second.
Yeah, and now you can get it all on Spotify.
Yeah, so fam, Spotify has made our Patreon feed available. All you have to do is search TCO Patreon feed. Just click on it. It'll walk you through it. If we have any other podcasters listening to this.
Yeah, like it's not just for listeners, it's also for creators too. Like just a note, I guess, from us to you.
We love you so much, and we just want other podcasters to know, like, you can make your Patreon content available over on Spotify. So get on it. Go do it. You will thank us when you see us at Obsessed Fest, probably.
Okay, great.
Hi, wine and crime, ladies.
Hi, everybody. We just did Gunther's Millions.
It's about the rich dog, the billionaire dog.
I know, like, or maybe not. It's about a dog somehow.
About
Madonna's
dog.
Involved.
My current obsession is the Who Killed Robert Won, which is a two-parter where, like, 4 guys in a house, one of them gets killed. Who did it?
Yeah.
And, like, it's a tough case to crack.
We take, like, a 20-minute Project Runway detour.
Yes, that's true.
There's a lot going on.
Fam, you get a full bonus episode every single week. Like, I'm amazed by that. You also get ad-free versions of these episodes.
Yeah, we do AMAs. Sometimes we send you stuff in the mail.
Yeah, it's a really fun place to be.
Lots of options.
Girl, what are we talking about today?
So this show has been very highly requested. It's called New York Homicide.
Yes.
This is season 1, episode 7. It's called Slade in Soho. We are going to be sprinkling in. I think this was pretty well done.
Yeah.
So we're going to be sprinkling in these episodes on your feed.
A writer in the vibrant art scene of early 1980s Soho is found dead in a parking lot. She was last seen en route to meet her husband.
He said he was supposed to meet his wife at the Puck Building at around 5 o'clock, and he went there, and from what I understand, they must have missed each other.
This is 1980s New York. Not really a time you want to be caught out after dark alone.
Detectives question if her husband could have been involved.
They're zoning in on him, and they're saying, who is this guy, Richard? Can we really believe his story right now?
Ironically, it's her missing wedding ring that provides a major clue.
Whoever sold this ring, maybe they tried to get money for it.
But if we found that ring, we'd probably find who was responsible for this.
This guy's getting out of town. There's something wrong here.
Can I just say why I think you think this was well done?
Why?
Because every single member of your family is in this?
No.
Number one, who is this host? I don't know if we ever get his name, but I want to know if you're related to him.
Robert Boyce, who's talking straight to camera. This guy.
Yes, they're all. It's like hosted by like a former New York City cop. You cannot tell me he's not your dad's brother.
You know what?
Can't tell me.
Well, my dad's an only child, so that would be a really big rude awakening
Breaking
for all of
news.
us. I should do like a 23andMe and see who's out there.
You are related to every member of the 7-5, or else my middle name isn't Joseph.
You know what?
What?
I hate that. I don't want to be related to those people. But let me tell you, so because we're in Soho, and Robert K. Boyce is the former New York City chief of detectives. He's talking straight to camera. He really wants you to know. He explains what Soho is, basically.
Yes.
Soho is south of Houston Street. But he's the only guy who talks straight to camera. And
Look, it's bringing out the queens in you. Do you hear? Talk straight to camera. No. Talks. You've said it 4 times. This is the Jillianest episode we've ever done.
Is it?
I think so.
I'm not like a beautiful artist.
No, it's because it's all like New York. Honey, when I'm referring to you being like an episode being the most, it's because it's the most Queens episode we've done in a while.
Even though it takes place in Soho, which is south of Houston Street.
New York City has many iconic neighborhoods, but there is one that stands out for its beauty and culture: Soho.
The neighborhood in Lower Manhattan is called Soho because it's south of Houston Street. The cheap loft spaces of the 70s attracted artists who could live and do their art on a starving artist budget.
What sort of like stands out about Soho in general is that they were where all the old factories was. So all of the buildings are like loft style because they used to be factories. And Claire Danes' family bought a loft there for like $30,000 in the 70s and sold it for like $8 million last year.
So in the 70s, all those loft spaces were cheap because if you can imagine it now, like Soho was the place you didn't want to be.
Yes.
So,
but
like,
a lot of the loft spaces didn't have bathrooms. Like you get them super cheap,
great. Yeah.
but you had to like build bathrooms. Like
but
it was not.
Now they're like $30,000 a month just to rent. They're they're like tens of millions of dollars if you really want to get like those beautiful.
It's also like not a neighborhood I ever want to go. It's just shopping. Like it's those loft buildings, but on the ground floor it's like all the fancy shopping stores.
Yeah.
Which is I have absolutely no need for.
There used to be a store down on Broadway and Canal, I think. No, but Yellow Rat Bastard that Ashley and I used to go to all the time. I got my like 555 Soul hoodie there. I loved Yellow Rat Bastard.
That's very you.
It is not there anymore.
So we meet Detective Paul Pace from the 5th Precinct. And I said, wait, Jillian, are you related to this guy too?
What about these names? Paul Pace?
It's not the names. It's just the way they talk.
Oh, like related? He's my Uncle Paul, that kind of thing. Yeah, I'm doing that 23andMe.
You need to. My God. But he tells us.
About 7:15, 7:30 at night, we got a call about a female DOA in a parking lot on 128 Elizabeth Street.
Female DOA. Oh my, we need to do better, Detective Pace.
I know. He says, and we meet Detective Marty Davin, who's retired. He goes, that's known in police parlance as a dump job. Can we not?
Holy shit.
I know it's police parlance, but there's a lot of police parlance that I'm not really thrilled about.
That we don't need to say.
Dump job is on the list.
Totally.
Please don't do that. That's rude.
Yeah.
But I know it's like, I get in trouble for saying this a lot. Like, oh, that's so rude. But it's like, that's how they talk. Like, okay, I don't know if that makes it right because they've been saying it for 40 years.
Well, and it's also like, oh, are we going to get a lot of that because this is New York where they have no filter? You know what I mean? But we learn about this body. She's missing her boots and gloves. So, like, and she's also been like brutally beaten before she was killed.
Yeah.
Also, you know, she's an Asian woman in her late 20s, early 30s. Her pants and underwear have been pulled down. Like she's definitely been sexually assaulted.
Yeah, they're defensive wounds, but no ID on her, no wallet, no anything. So we meet Esha Ray, who's the editor for the New York Daily News, and she's here to say like, who is this person? What's her name? How did this happen? And she's telling us that the cops, like, they really had to start from scratch because there was nothing.
Yeah, and like the way she was killed, they say she had been strangled, like, and really badly beaten up. She had fought back.
Yeah.
They say that like whoever killed her, it was close and physical. He's like, it wasn't a gunshot from 10 feet away. So this was obviously like a very personal crime.
And we get a lot of, you know, because this was the 80s, this was a long time ago. We don't have the GPS stuff. We don't have the technology.
You're going to have to be relying on fingerprints that are taken in the morgue, maybe dental records. And then hopefully someone would come forward and say that this person is missing.
And then, you know, you just hope that someone calls looking for her.
I know.
Oh, wow.
Is that the best we could do in the 80s?
Amazing. Great job, everybody. Keep up the good work. What is it, 5:01? Let's get home.
I
Put
know.
the pot roast on the table.
I just like how any of these murders got solved before DNA. I don't understand. Because there's no cameras.
DNA.
I mean, how many of these episodes that we make are like, it's all based on surveillance video?
Yeah.
DNA. Right? Like,
this was long before we were being filmed and followed and listened to with every device.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, there are cases now where we can actually follow someone from store to store, like, or road to road because of like the security cameras at the store. Like, we're not here.
No, not anywhere close.
No.
Detective Pace is working late that night. He says it's about 2 a.m. when somebody walks in. And I'm thinking, 2 a.m., Detective Pace? It's one thing to work late, be really committed to the case. At 2 a.m., it feels like you just don't want to go home.
Well, there's several SVU episodes where they stay through the night.
Really?
Days and days. Yeah. Like, Liv is, you know, sleeping for 20 minutes and then something happens. Like, when you're on a case.
I get it.
You got to work it.
Look, and I'm glad to hear that these cops are really, they're invested in this case.
My out the door at 5:01 joke is not applicable here. And I appreciate that. I like that. So they're working on the case. It's 2 a.m. Someone walks in. His name is Richard Barnes.
Yeah.
And he reports his wife missing.
They were supposed to meet for dinner. She didn't show up. He thinks that, well, maybe she got caught up with some work. She got caught up with some friends. She decided to do something else. He meets up with friends for drinks.
Again, they're not texting. There's no cell phones.
I was just
going to
say, like, we have to remember, I don't think that was that uncommon back then. Like, how did you get in touch with people? So this is Richard, and his wife didn't show up. And if, like, they have the kind of relationship where, like, sometimes she's a little forgetful, or maybe, like, in the past, like, she's just decided to do something else. It feels very weird from a 2023 perspective.
I agree.
But in 1980, when this takes place, this probably wasn't that uncommon.
Yeah, and I guess he just says maybe they went to a local spot where she would show up there when he's drinking with his friends or something. But yeah, it's very interesting. Like, it's very important to look at this at the year where it's taking place.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't just text her. It's not like she wasn't responding to texts.
Exactly.
And I think now we just go to like, well, why didn't he call her?
Why wasn't he more worried? You know what I mean? Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Maybe he did go to the payphone down the block and call the house. I don't know.
And then, like, you have to check. Remember when I had to talk you through how you would check your own answering machine?
Answering machines. There's a lot that got lost in translation there, and people were very upset at my point of view. I know how an answering machine works.
Okay. Did you ever have one?
Yes, of course. God, people thought there was all of this like really shady business that I was trying to lie about all this shit. It was very strange.
Lying? Why?
I don't know. People are crazy.
Sam.
I know what an answering machine is. I've used one. I've left a message. I've checked messages.
Right.
But yeah, they couldn't do that.
But Detective Pace tells us as soon as Richard tells him what his wife was wearing and what she looked like, he says,
And as soon as he told me what his wife was wearing and what she looked like, I knew I had bad news for him. I had a Polaroid, and I showed him the Polaroid, and that was it.
I had a Polaroid of her dead
know.
fucking body.
We gotta do better.
He pulls out the Polaroid to show Richard, and like that's how Richard finds out that his wife is this body that they just found in that Elizabeth Street parking lot. Like,
Yeah.
what on?
No, because the cops are realizing, oh my God, he's describing our Jane Doe.
Yes.
So what do we do here? And
Let me pull out the Polaroid and show you a picture of your brutally murdered wife. Absolutely not.
Choices were made that night at 2 a.m.
Oh my God. So the detectives no longer have a Jane Doe. They learn that the victim's name is Theresa Cha.
Yeah.
And we meet her brother, John.
John, what a hero John is.
I love John so, I mean, my God, John plays a major role in this
Huge.
down the road.
As does their mother, the whole family does.
Yeah, so John gets a call from 6 a.m. from Richard, and he's like, why is that guy calling me? And I
Richard
was
the
like-
husband.
Richard the husband. I was like, that's cold, John. But then I was kind of like, yeah, if one of Steve's siblings called me, I would definitely think that something was up.
You wouldn't do a what's the matter?
What's the matter? What's the matter?
What happened?
Whoa,
What?
whoa, whoa, what's the
My
matter? What's
mom's
happened?
tone when I call, hey, hello, hi.
Just like when you call to say hello?
If
Barbara?
because I know we text constantly,
Yeah.
so for me to call,
Uh-huh.
she's always you can hear the trepidation. She's like, "Hi,"
That is such a specific tone.
And-
It's such a
but you
mom
know what I mean, right?
100%.
Hey, what?
Oh, hi.
Like, who's dead?
Uh-huh.
What happened? Are you in trouble? What? Like, who? How can I help? Like, just and I'm like,
Anytime-
no, it's nothing. It's just easier. You know, if we're like, sometimes I would call her about like, okay, so Mike and I are going to come this day or
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
time or whatever, and it's just kind of easier. Hi.
Hi.
Well, you
That
okay?
is-
And I'm like, Mom,
That is so funny.
please.
But Richard has to tell John that Teresa's dead. And then, John, the brother, is just saying that, like,
When you first hear the news, it's like those projection machines. It goes click, 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 and it goes on like that. And that's what I was seeing. Her image as a child, that's what I saw.
all he can do is, like, see images of Teresa throughout her life, which now we see, and now I'm sobbing.
Right. And we learned they were a very, very close-knit family. There were 5 of them. Teresa was the third sibling. John was the oldest. They immigrated from Korea. And we learned so much about Teresa here.
I know.
And I just kept thinking, like, more of this.
I know.
More of
it's
this
true.
because she doesn't get lost here.
Yep.
It ends with this, like, really beautiful moment about her. She was an artist. We learned so much about who
I gotta
she
tell
was.
you, I side-googed a bit, and I learned even more about her,
Yeah,
which I'll
she's
share.
incredible. We shouldn't be shocked by this.
Right.
This shouldn't be rare that it's
Right.
like, wow, we really get to learn about this person and who she was.
I know, and I could really see her because Brother John says that, like, when they first moved to the country, the transition was hard for her. She was young and she didn't talk a lot. She was very, like, to herself.
Yeah.
Which, of course, like, reminded me of Daisy.
Very
like,
introverted.
Daisy can be kind of on the quiet side. But we learned that, like, ultimately in life, she was very expressive. Like, remember, she, turns out to be an artist.
Yeah.
And he says that, like, when she was young, she wins this big art contest,
Yeah.
like, that was held by the San Francisco Light. Like, she was, like, really fucking good at art, like, from a young age.
And that's the way she expressed herself. And
Yeah.
she did it in many ways, in many different mediums.
She was also trilingual. She becomes fluent in Korean, English, and French. Like,
God.
oh my God. I'm
Right?
barely fluent in English.
Barely.
Barely.
Hardly.
Hardly.
Barely. No, barely is the right one. Yeah, see,
Well, who
we're living
knows?
it. We're living it. She went to UC Berkeley, which
Yeah.
has a very big community of artists and writers, and she loved being with she was like the cool artsy kid, and she
Yeah.
like found her people, and they all were just really into. She was like living the life of an artist
Which
immediately.
I was so, I'm like, I want this life. We meet her friend Sandy.
She was an undergrad and I was a graduate student. And one of the things I remembered most about her was her voice, which was like breath. She emanated a kind of kindness and a kind of spirituality that she's otherworldly.
She talks a lot about her voice. She says she was
Yeah.
so soft-spoken, and there was something about her voice that you just sort of like perked up. Like you couldn't, you were so, she was fascinating. She was a fascinating
And
person.
she knew herself. Like, she was in touch
Yeah.
with herself. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. And so Theresa met her husband at UC Berkeley. He went to her art shows, and then he helped her produce these video projects and her photography. And so they immediately started working together.
Yes. And they tell us that by the end of the 70s, Theresa felt like she'd outgrown the Bay Area, and all of her friends were moving to New York, and she wanted to move to New York. And now we're headed to New York City in the 1980s, baby.
Yeah, because Soho was like this up-and-coming art community, and because of like the really cheap rents with the old factories and the lofts, like they tell us that there were a lot of drugs down there back in the early 80s.
It's wild to hear them describe Soho in the 80s, because when I think of Soho in the 80s, I think of like Madonna and Basquiat and Keith Haring.
Yeah.
Like that's where they all like lived and hung out. But they tell us it was full of galleries and writers and poets and artists and photographers. Like it is definitely not that anymore.
It's very sterile now.
It's very
compared
sterile.
to what it was.
Right.
Back
It's
then.
very just like rich people live there, and that's where all like the fancy shops are.
Yeah.
But like whenever you see a picture of like Madonna or Keith Haring like in the 1980s, they're always standing like in some doorstop in Soho.
Down at like cafeteria or whatever.
Yeah, because it's also like cobblestone streets. It's a very cool,
those are,
you know?
It is very cool. And there are definitely like very cool blocks still down in Soho.
Yes.
But for the most part, like the big fancy galleries and like, everyone thinks like, oh, Madison Avenue in New York City and the Upper East Side. And that's totally true. Madison Avenue and Fifth Avenue, like for sure. But there are some pricey, like Soho can have the cool, like that's where like all the knockoff bags are too, down at Broadway and Canal.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's still stuff where like the price tag, you're like, oh my God, like what is this? Like I can't go shopping down there. And here's something that is going to make a lot of people go, oh, like, this is interesting. Richard and Theresa's relationship was like a little bit rocky. They were kind of on and off, and they would separate and then get back together again. And so, of course, the cops are like, oh, let's focus on that. And let's really ask Richard, the husband, what happened that night.
And you know what? Like, fair question, cops. Like, I want to look into Richard, too, at this point.
Right.
You know?
So here's what he tells the cops.
He said he was supposed to meet his wife at the Puck Building at around 5 o'clock, and he went there. And they must have missed each other. He went home, and he called a few people. They asked if he'd seen Theresa, and nobody said anything.
Richard's like, I don't know. I guess we just missed each other because Theresa never showed up.
Right.
So it's not like he was at the restaurant for dinner.
And that's what I was trying to say earlier was like, if they have that kind of on-again, off-again relationship, maybe this is why. Like, maybe one of them was flaky and they just wouldn't show up sometimes or whatever. You know? Like, it seems like it wasn't that unusual for one of them to have just not been there.
Right. And so he goes home and then he like called around asking for her. And
so it's not like he did nothing. It's not like he just was like, I'm just going to go drinking with my friends and who cares. He did go home and make some calls to see if anybody knew where she was, but nobody did.
And by 2 a.m., he comes in to report her missing. So it's not like he was just going to say like, oh, maybe she'll come home tomorrow.
Exactly.
Like I think he looked for her, couldn't find her, went out for a couple drinks, and then came home. She wasn't home, and he went right to the police department.
And this is when that journalist says, like, this was 1980s New York, not really a time you want to be caught out after dark alone. I was like, everyone calm down. Plenty of people survived in New York in the 80s and were just fine.
I got to tell you, like, it's bad everywhere.
Always.
So,
exactly.
like, from the beginning of time to now to tomorrow to the next year.
Like, I get that it was dangerous, and obviously this is a tragic story that happened as like murders did happen, but it was like, come on, like you couldn't go outside.
Let's not sensationalize
You don't want to get caught
this.
outside in New York after dark in New York in the 80s. Like, oh my God.
Like, let's learn more about Theresa. Let's not sensationalize this, please. You know what I mean? They're really looking at the husband and like we're saying like, of course.
Because they're also saying the fact that he went out drinking with friends was viewed with skepticism and with some suspicion.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like we have to put ourselves in the mindset of like not being able to constantly communicate.
Right.
You know?
But also back then, like they didn't know any different.
Right.
So,
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's weird that like your wife didn't like you think your wife blew you off. So like, yeah, you're gonna have drinks with your friends.
Yeah. And I also think like you have to ask the husband. You have to ask like
100%.
You have to be a little suspicious and be like, okay, so you just left? Like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
So they ask him about what she was wearing the last time he saw her. And this is what she was wearing when she left the house that morning.
Because the last time he saw her was that morning at the apartment.
Right.
When detectives press Richard to describe her outfit for the day, they get their first lead.
She was wearing a beret, gloves, a red leather coat. Theresa was also carrying a red bag from the Met.
And then the cops are like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Because her gloves and her beret were missing from the scene. So they really want to find those items.
Yeah, and they keep saying, like, if we can find Theresa's missing clothes, it'll be a huge piece of evidence. Just huge, Jillian.
With a Y.
Huge.
Huge with a Y. And then they're like, okay, so we know what she was wearing. We got to find those two items, the gloves and the beret. But like, what was she doing all day? Like, why would she have maybe been late or blowing you off or whatever?
He says she went to work at the Met. So I guess she worked at the Met.
Which is all the way on the Upper East Side.
Very far from where she
Soho.
was. Yeah. Then after that, she was supposed to go to a gallery called the Artist Space where she was going to meet with the owners about like a show that she had coming up there.
Yeah.
Which I was like, Theresa was fucking
She
doing
was living
it.
that life.
She was doing
big time.
it.
Like
Yeah.
even her like survival job or day job was at the Met. You know, like she was just really, really in that community. And when she's at this gallery, the Artist Space, she meets with this guy, Kenji Fujita. He's a photographer.
Now, the cops go really far. They're like, this Kenji Fujita was a photographer by trade, so he paid attention to the lighting.
He was so obsessed with lighting that he was able to know for sure that she left before sunset because they're like, he's always very aware of all the lighting in his life. And I'm like, or maybe he just realized, I don't like.
They say that they were able to kind of pinpoint it to like, based on Kenji's description of the lighting, it was about 4:30 in the afternoon, which lines up because it would take her about a half hour to walk to the Puck building from there, and she was supposed to meet Richard at 5. But I was like, even Kenji was like, I don't like lighting that much.
Yeah, everyone lighten up. Oh, not literally. Or maybe this helped. I don't know.
We don't know.
But they kind of like poor Kenji because Kenji's not here.
Yeah.
So I wonder if he's like, well, I'm not that pretentious. Like I like light, but I don't know. I just noticed it was sunset.
Exactly.
So they think that she left probably around 4:30 p.m.
Yeah.
And that made sense because she was supposed to meet her husband at 5. So we're clocking it around like 4:30-ish.
We cut back to Brother John real quick, and he's like very aware of like how dangerous New York was in the 80s.
Yeah.
And he's like, we were not certain why she wanted to live there. You know what I mean?
It's a big change from Berkeley,
It's
you know?
also like anybody who's ever moved to New York is like, you have to explain to your family the appeal. Like for those of us who moved here from somewhere else, it was a no-brainer. Like we were always going to, you only move here if you were always going to move here.
Okay, yeah.
But like to other people, it's like, it's expensive, it's dangerous, it's why would you go there? You know what I mean? So I understand that sentiment of like, it makes perfect sense to Theresa. Like that's where the art is. That's where all my friends are going. That's where I can like live in 30,000 square feet for $5 a month and make my art and do my thing. But Brother John's like, but the murder rate though.
Yeah. When we were in LA and Vegas, for this time, like specific, I don't know why, but everyone we met who was like, hey, where are you from? When we said New York, more often than not, they were literally like, ugh, how do you do it? And I'm like,
know.
I don't know, but
people hate New York. If you don't live here, they hate it.
And that's like, that's super, that's fine. But what if I was like in Minnesota?
Right.
And then someone was like, or no,
you're like, oh, all the moose.
And
how do you do it?
I would be like, oh, cool. I've never been there. It must be cold. I wouldn't just be like, ugh, horrible. How do you do? Well, I'm not going to live there. It's like, okay.
It's true. People definitely feel they have a license to shit all over New York. It does not matter.
If the tables were turned, I would never. But I also could never. Like I would never be able to get away with that shit.
Totally.
I also there's nothing in me to shit on where you came from.
I know.
Either. Like,
North Dakota, oh my God.
Like, I would be like, what's that like? I've never been.
Totally. But I'm also intensely curious. What is North Dakota like?
Yeah.
Somebody chime in the Facebook group.
Like a place where I wouldn't, I'm trying to think of a place with weather where I'd be like, oof, I could never survive there.
Oh, like Phoenix. You could never live in Phoenix.
But the dry air might be good.
Okay.
But I would say like.
Always looking on the bright side, GP.
But what I would say is like, oh man, I'm such a winter person. Like, what's the heat like?
Yeah. Totally.
Are you okay? It's like 108 usually, right? But I wouldn't be like, oh God, I feel sorry for you. Like, you don't have to feel sorry for me. I'm okay.
We're fine.
I'm all right.
But back to the case. Now we're learning that like neither Theresa nor Richard made a lot of money, and they're saying like maybe that's a reason why he might have killed her. Like
their financial struggles.
Money struggles lead to stress, and maybe he snapped. I'm like, we're kind of reaching here, guys. No.
Yeah, and then they're like, plus the on and off thing, like this like quote rocky relationship, and we learn like this is where we learn more about Theresa.
She's always starving, artist. That expression doesn't come idly. She's worked part-time jobs and anything to support her artwork. She's constantly needs money, and so we send her money whenever we can.
Brother John's like, we were sending her money all the time.
Because she was living the life of an artist in Soho in New York
City.
Can
I tell you, if I needed money, there's no world in which my sisters would be like just cutting checks and putting them in the mail. John, you are an angel.
Yeah, well, maybe when she's like right out of college and she's trying to get her footing, you know, like now if you call your sisters,
Can you imagine, Sarah? I need $100.
You know.
Rent's due.
But we learned that she was killed a week before her book came out.
So here's where I went down a rabbit hole.
Me too.
So she wrote a book called Dictée. This is wild. Like it was published the day before she was killed. She mailed a copy to her brother. He got it on the day of the funeral. It felt to him like she was talking to him from the other side.
And we'll get into more of that because I believe she was.
But can I tell you this book Dictée, I went like on a rabbit hole about it.
I have the whole synopsis.
Major work. So this is from like an article that I read. It was newly restored in 2022. It says, newly restored, this version of Theresa Cha's masterpiece honors the author's original intentions and vision for the book. Originally published in 1982, Dictée is a classic of modern Asian American literature. On YouTube, there's a marathon reading of it.
Wow.
That's like 7 hours long of different speakers in like 2020 just reading the book. This is like, Dictée is apparently a major work.
And it's an autobiography that, quote, transcends the self. And it's the story of several women. So it's like revolutionaries, and it's her and her mother, and then like other famous women. And then it says, the book is divided into 9 parts structured around the Greek muses. Cha deploys a variety of texts, documents, images, and forms of address and inquiry to explore issues of dislocation and the fragmentation of memory. The result is a work of power, complexity, and enduring beauty.
It's what this book came out in 1980, and it was like, it's been in print this whole time. It was just remastered in 2022. They don't say any of this in the documentary.
A classic work of autobiography that transcends the self is what this says.
Wild.
Like to use like other women's stories to tell your story and your mother's story.
Yeah.
Like it's incredibly moving.
Unbelievable. And it's like still talked about to this day.
I know.
Talk about creating something that outlives you.
I know.
You know?
And so we learn, instead of learning about this book, we learn that Richard, the husband, is cleared because eventually they realize, you know what? He would have had injuries.
I knew what happened to his wife, how she was beaten, which I know more or less that whoever did this would have some sort of laceration or scratches on their face or arms. And when I looked at his face and I looked at his arms, there was no scratches.
There would be defensive wounds on the person's body.
And there were wounds on her that showed that she fought.
Yes.
So her husband didn't have any of those things. So they're back to square one. And they're thinking like, are there any witnesses? This was in a parking lot, basically. Like, this is New York City. It was it was probably the afternoon. Like, what's going on?
It was daylight. They say somebody would have walked by. So that makes them think that like that's where the body was dumped, but that's probably not where the murder took place.
Right.
There's also no physical evidence in the parking lot. Like it's clearly just like where the body was put.
And at this time, the Puck Building is undergoing a major renovation.
So this again blew my mind. The Puck Building is a major landmark building in New York. So like the fact that it was going through a major renovation in 1980 kind of blew my mind.
Yeah. So it wasn't really open to the public.
No, but it also means that like there weren't like there were just like workers there. So not people who were there like all the time or every day. Plus the building was kind of like gutted on the inside.
It was like a maze. It was just a construction site, and it was kind of like messy, and no one was really going in. I mean, that's dangerous.
Well, but it's also a place where violence can happen because it's like not really regulated, and it's no one's looking, and it's dark.
It's just like a big, empty, dark, scary place.
Exactly.
So they search the building. They bring the dogs in. The dogs go crazy, but nothing happens, and this is considered a dead end.
Yeah, they go into the basement of the building, and they search, and they find nothing. And once again, the dogs hit, which is kind of crazy because then they find nothing. And remember, she's missing like her hat and her gloves, but they can't find a crime scene anywhere.
Yeah,
and they kind of just give
up.
They're
just like, oh well. And meanwhile, like everyone is going through it. Richard, her husband, is a mess. Teresa's family is a mess.
And
Teresa's
family blaming Richard.
They're mad at Richard, and they're thinking like, John, her brother, says that her parents were super angry at him. Like, where was he? What was he doing? Just trying to make sense of it.
But it's also like, can you imagine? Teresa is not the kind of woman who wanted her husband following her around all day, like beating off people who were trying to bother her. You know what I mean?
Like the big question is like, why didn't he protect her? And I think it's a very natural thing. I don't think it's like a realistic thing to ask.
Yeah.
But in the days after a murder, I think, of course, the parents are going to be thinking
feel
that.
however you want to feel.
Of course. And because I'm sure they I'm gathering that they didn't really love that she moved all the way to New York City. And I think.
And their worst fears came true.
I was just going to say.
That very, very, very rarely happens, but it happened in this case.
Right. And now they're thinking like, well, why wasn't he there?
Yeah. Yeah. This is where that journalist says,
there's no iPhones, very little technology. This is going to require some boots on the ground gumshoe work.
Gumshoeing.
The
hey,
word
gumshoes. Like Carmen Sandiego, right?
Yes,
hey,
yes.
gumshoes.
Totally.
We got to bring that back. Here's another major thing that was missing. So, like, her beret is missing, a glove is missing, her wedding ring is missing.
And her wedding ring is a really unique piece. It was custom made.
Yeah, and so was Richard's, her husband.
Exactly.
She had a ring that was custom made. There was a silver band with a black stone in the middle, and I think 2 red stones on the side. And his ring was silver metal with a red stone in the middle and 2 black on the side. They were identical to a point, but they were opposite colors.
Now, Richard's ring was the same, but the colors were opposite. So there was a red stone in the middle and 2 black stones on the side.
And they just say that, like, well, if the person who did this stole the ring, maybe they tried to pawn it or something.
Yeah.
And if we can find the ring, then we can probably find the person who did this.
Right.
Which I'm like, are murderers that fucking stupid?
In 1980?
Yeah. But I mean, even still,
But,
the hashtag stay stupid. Like, everyone is so bad
And
at
like,
this.
I'm sorry, that ring is long gone. If it was on a table in Soho, like next to the fake Louis Vuitton or whatever they were doing back in 1980, like, it's gone.
Yeah.
And no one is going to say, oh, yeah, I remember that guy that put that,
and there's no cameras, like,
No.
right. It's.
Yeah, they don't. Those guys like with the tables don't have like an inventory, and they're definitely not going to be a snitch. Like,
Right,
let's
yeah.
be honest here. So it's Monday morning, and the investigation really starts to ramp up.
This is 3 days after. So, like, she died on a Friday. I'm like, nobody can work over the week. You got to wait till Monday to ramp up. Just go to this guy's at his desk till 2 a.m. Get call people in. There's a dead body.
Well, it was the construction site, so the construction wasn't happening on the weekends.
Right.
So when Monday rolls around,
sorry, I got a little worked up.
All the construction workers.
Yeah.
Look, I know all about no-show jobs. I lived across from one where it was horrible. But all the construction workers are back at work. So,
right, and that's what they're saying. Like, they couldn't talk to people who were who worked at the murder scene because those people don't work on weekends.
Right. So now, like, the Puck building went from this sort of like desolate, empty place to just this really like booming construction site in the light of day.
Right.
So the cops go down to question people.
And it isn't long before a plumber speaks up.
This plumber who comes in and he sort of barges in and he's got to get something off of his chest. And he thinks he knows who killed Theresa.
He's got to get something off his chest. He thinks he knows who killed Theresa.
And he so he's working at the Puck building as a plumber.
Yeah.
And he lives with his brother-in-law named Joey Sansa. And Peter says, look, this Joey...
I was like, hang on a second. You live with your
I
brother-in-law?
know.
Where's the wife? What?
Oh, she's in the tub. We'll get to her.
Kathy.
Peter's like, look, my brother-in-law...
in maybe one of the grossest moments we're going to ever cover. We'll get there in just a minute.
I mean, maybe not grossest.
To me, I was feeling very vomitous.
It's really bad, but I'm just saying, like...
Yeah, we'll get there.
So Peter's like, my fucking brother-in-law. So
I know.
This guy, his name is Joey. He works at the Puck, and one night he comes home and he's super agitated.
Yeah. And it happens to be the night that now Peter knows Theresa was killed.
Right.
Yeah.
So Kathy is the sister.
So you can understand what's going on here, this guy Joey has come to live with his sister and her husband.
Right.
And the husband is the one who's like, my brother-in-law who just came to live with us was acting real weird.
And here's the weird thing.
So when the brother-in-law Joey comes home, his sister Kathy is in the bath.
She just took a bath.
Oh, this is so gross.
Joey's like, no, wait, don't drain it.
Joey said, can I use your water in the bathtub? Kathy said, why would you want to use my water? I just took a bath in it.
Joey Sansa gets into the bath, which had not yet been drained by Kathy. That was very notable to Kathy and obviously very strange.
He wants to take a bath in her bathwater. Jillian, why is my skin crawling?
I don't know, but it made me think of that No Doubt song.
What is it?
It's called Bathwater. And the chorus is literally like, and I still love to wash in your old bathwater. It's literally about Gwen Stefani or whatever wanting to like bathe in someone's old bathwater.
I think that, like, I am not a squeamish person about these kinds of things. This made me want to jump out of my skin. Bathing in your sister's bathwater, that feels so gross to me.
It's absolutely disgusting. It's 1,000.
Right?
It's so, but everyone Everyone's like record scratch moment in the precinct. They're like, I'm sorry, he did what? What he did is so weird and disgusting that no one forgets it. We have 4 cops tell us the same story because they're like, and we remember that little tidbit, that little fact.
Oh my God.
Because it's so weird. Because the urgency of him needing to wash himself, that's the point.
It's 43 years after the fact, and everyone remembers this disgusing detail.
Wouldn't you?
Yes.
I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life, unfortunately, with the soundtrack of No Doubt.
Yeah.
And your museum of lovers. And that's the point. He just needed to wash himself, right?
Yeah. But wait, was the point of bathing in her bathwater to get her DNA on him or something? Why?
No, I think this Joey guy's an idiot.
Okay.
I think he was just like, get out of there. I think he was panicking. Because Peter, the brother-in-law, says he was very agitated.
Yeah.
So he just, I don't think he cared. He wasn't thinking. And I think that, I don't even know if he knew that it was her old bathwater necessarily. He would just needed to wash himself after committing this horribly violent act. But on top of that, not only is that weird and disgusting and a major red flag.
Totally. That we all remember 43 years later.
Ever. But it also seems like they live in these their apartments from the 1930s where that's the only way to get washed is to sit in the bath with the feet on it.
Like a claw tub.
Like a claw tub? Is that what it's really called?
Yes.
A claw tub? Yes.
Yeah.
To me, that she was like, oh, what a lovely... She had it. She had a long week.
Her brother moved in with them a couple weeks ago. It
that
sucks.
can't be
Life
fun.
sucks.
And he's clearly a piece of shit. So it's not fun. They just want to watch Cheers or whatever.
What's going to happen with Sam and Diane?
Norm! I started watching a couple episodes of Cheers. I like Cliff.
Oh my God, Cliff is good.
He's like, hey, hey, Normie. No, he calls him Nam. Hey, Nam.
I just couldn't anyway. But Peter also tells investigator that Joey, the bad guy here, Peter got Joey the job at the Puck building, but then on Monday, Joey never shows up for work.
Right, so not only did he do this weird bathwater thing.
Yeah.
Peter also tells investigators that Joey was supposed to go to work the next day, but he never showed up.
Then he doesn't show up Saturday night to sleep in Brooklyn, nor does he come back Sunday night to sleep.
He took some money from Joey Sands' sister and a piece of jewelry.
He steals money and jewelry from his sister.
Which is just oh my God.
This is the guy.
And Peter's I told you not to let him move in here.
Yeah, and she's like, I know, I promised my mother. God.
I told you this was going to be a problem.
All right, I promised her, okay? What, you're always right. You got what you want now.
If that fucking guy comes back, he's not living in here.
I don't want him to live here. I don't want him to live here. He stole my fucking jewelry. She turned into Kitten Heels. God damn it!
Oh my God. That was...
You can't. That really was taking a toll on their marriage.
Yes,
no question.
yes, for
Joey,
sure.
the brother, not only any brother-in-law, this piece of shit.
Honestly, Peter was so anxious to turn this guy in for murder.
He couldn't wait.
Do it fast enough.
The cops show up and they're like, "Hey, man!" He's leaving all the construction stuff. And Joey, you're gonna burn the place down. I don't care.
I gotta fucking tell him that.
It's like when people when the cops ask for tips and everyone's calling about their shitty neighbor or bad ex-boyfriend.
Or their boyfriend. Yeah.
Peter's like, this is my fucking time to shine. Because you're asking?
Yes.
And
yes.
boy, do I have a story for you.
Oh my God.
This is actually the guy.
Yes.
But then they go and talk to the sister, Kathy, and she gives them more information.
Well, some of it's a little garbagey. It's true. So what
I only have the ring. What are we talking about?
Oh, yeah. So no, Kathy says, not only was my brother acting strange, he was wearing an unusual ring. Remember how...
You got real Joe Pesci, an unusual ring.
Unusual ring.
No, that's not Joe Pesci, but you got Steve Martin doing an accent. It's a really unusual ring you got there.
Did I really do that with my hands?
I don't know if you did, but with your tone gave me the
yeah.
hands. Real unusual ring. Got him
It's
down.
a real unusual. But Kathy says, so remember, Theresa was missing her ring.
His sister noticed the ring and commented that it made him look feminine.
Made him look effeminate.
Right. Because it's too...
Why don't you go down and hang out with those queens in the West Village? Stonewall.
Oh, wait till I tell Mom about this.
It's unnatural.
We always knew. We always knew.
He
was always a little... He's always a little...
Yeah, a little...
a little ding. Ding.
But Kathy's able to describe the ring in enough detail.
Because it is very unusual.
It is.
And it is a woman's ring. So she's kind of like, what? You know what? I wear boys' stuff all the time.
People can wear whatever makes them feel
it's
comfortable.
True. Whatever. I'm not defending any.
I know. The homophobia
Like
of it all. I
homophobia.
know. No, but they're able to say like that's definitely Theresa's ring. So like they know he's the fucking guy.
Right. So now they just need to find him.
Yes.
Because Joey had only been in New York for a few months.
Right.
And Peter, the brother-in-law, got him the job at the Puck Building, and he was just recently promoted to security guard.
Which,
Great.
oh my God, when we
Great.
find out this guy's backstory, the fact that he was like, no one does, when you give somebody a job like that, there should be a very simple background check.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know what background checks were like in the 80s. Go look at the Dewey Decimal System. Go to your local library. I don't know what you have to do, but
Yeah.
for someone to work in security, they should be able to work in security.
Now, this next bit was such a clusterfuck because the detective says, look, we pulled his time card. We saw that he punched out at, and I quote,
He punched out, I think, at 5-something on the 5th of November.
That is the exact same time that Theresa was expected at the Puck Building.
Theresa was expected at the Puck Building at exactly 5-something.
Exactly 5-something.
Which is so funny because it's just an example of the narrator being given the copy without seeing
Sure.
the scene. You
Of
know what I
course,
mean?
right.
Like, because if the narrator had been like, wait, you want me to say exactly? And the guy
Yeah.
just said 5-something.
Of course. Keith Morrison, we're not dealing with Keith here, okay?
She was expected there at exactly 5-something.
Exactly. Not
On
a
the
minute
dot.
over, not a minute later.
Don't you be late.
All right. I feel like there's a lot of all right. They're poor neighbors. God, it's every day.
Ever since you let that brother move in, I told you this was going to be a fucking nightmare.
Shut up. I don't want to
hate him and I
hear.
hate you.
Yeah, well, back at you, I suppose.
Our 1970s sitcom is going to be
I mean,
it's going to be really good. Now we learned that the night of the murder, Joey, the bad guy, obviously the killer, had access to a van because one of the managers of the restoration project had given him the keys and asked him to clean the van out. And so the cops tell us Joey returns the van to the boss at 5:45. So remember, Theresa was expected at the Puck Building at 5.
Right.
And
he returned the keys.
he returned the keys at 5:45. So the cops are saying,
Certainly there was enough time to take the body in the van, dump the body in the parking lot, and drive back to the Puck Building and return the keys.
remove the body and return the keys to the supervisor by 5:45. Now, look, I am not making a joke here when I tell you I don't know about that, like with the timeline, because with the traffic in lower Manhattan, it's a fucking nightmare.
5
I
o'clock.
don't know exactly how far away this parking lot is from the Puck Building, but it takes you 45 minutes to get a mile in New York City.
It can take you 45 minutes to go 2 blocks.
So I'm just saying that timeline's a little sus to me. I'm also eventually not convinced this guy's the killer.
Really?
Yeah. Well, there's one major thing that happens that I have some questions about.
Oh, God.
I mean, he is a piece of shit, and I want him rotting in jail for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
But I'm not necessarily, based on the information given to us in this episode, I'm not necessarily convinced he's the guy.
Oh, my God.
I know.
Okay, now I'm scared.
Yeah.
So by 8:30 p.m., witnesses saw Joey Sanza at the Puck Building.
Yeah, and he's carrying the red bag from the Met. Okay, he's probably the killer. But
He's definitely the killer.
there's one thing, and we'll get there in a second.
Okay.
But remember, she had been working at the Met. She had a red Met bag
Yeah.
that she was carrying. Witnesses at 8:30 p.m. see him with the bag.
Right.
The witnesses say the bag made him stand out. And to which I said, why? Does it make him look effeminate?
Does it make him look a little
A little twee?
a little
a little light in the loafers.
Where did that even come from? Light in the loafers?
Because I think it's like a reference to being a fairy.
But like loafers?
We're gays, but we're not going to wear loafers.
Loafers are the ones where you put the penny in them, right? Yikes.
Yikes.
I think we've evolved
Yes.
style-wise.
But the host tells us
Detectives are confident that Joey is their man, but they have 2 problems. They don't know where he is, and they don't have any evidence to tie him directly to the murder.
they don't have any direct evidence tying him to the case.
Right, he bailed.
So, not great evidence.
No. So a month after Theresa's murder, her family goes to the Puck Building.
So, the brother and the family who live in San Francisco, it's 2 brothers. It's John and another unnamed brother. They are coming to New York to sort of like tie up her affairs or whatever, and they want to see where this happened. So they go to the basement of the Puck Building where everyone believes she was killed.
Yeah, because they're thinking that maybe this happened in the Puck Building.
Yes.
So they want to go to the scene and sort of do their own investigating.
Yeah.
And they go there and they go down into the basement and they start seeing these numbers.
Well, they go into the basement, which the cops had already searched.
The
cops-
dogs were down there and
Yes.
they hit on something and the cops were like, whatever.
But the brothers see another small staircase to a sub-basement, which I guess the cops didn't know about.
I guess not. Or ask a question about.
Right. They get down to this sub-basement, which the cops did not search, and they start to see these pillars with numbers on them, like 710, 711, 712.
Right. And John tells us the story where Theresa's mom had a dream.
My mother said she had a dream Theresa came out and showed up in the dream and told my mother, I am here, I'm right here. And 3 sevens showed up. And so when I saw those numbers, I knew this is the place.
And they keep looking and like they just keep seeing these numbers that start with 7.
Yes.
And they keep like they are just like following the numbers, following the 7s, and they find all of the things. I have like I can't believe this.
This is wild.
I just got like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So they find everything that the cops were missing from the scene. The beret, her glove.
And like the beret is caked in blood, they say.
Like her family, her brother
found the fucking
this.
crime scene. Like this to me is so unforgivably irresponsible of the cops. Like if you think she was murdered in the basement, can you get the floor plan and just make sure there's not a fucking sub-basement?
And then it was like a month of construction happening, so people coming in and out. Like it's
the
just
fact
so
that like the
horrible.
sub-basement, like the crime scene was perfectly preserved.
Like,
and the brother had to, it is so irresponsible to me.
And I'm so glad, for lack of a better term, like the fact that this piece of shit just left everything there so that we can find it and prove that he did this to her in this place.
You wouldn't, like, you would think, like, if he, like, we know he came back to the Puck building because people saw him at like 8:30.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you go back down there and get the fucking shit that you know what I mean?
I mean, he wasn't thinking. And DNA wasn't a thing, and who cares? And like, to him, like, it's just a dead body and he's in the wind somewhere. Like, he just didn't care.
Yep.
So, like, John Cha is a hero. I'm just saying that. Teresa's brother,
more.
like, and also the strength he has to sit and talk to us about this the way he does.
He says, like, this thing where he said,
my parents, I mean, they went through a lot, you know, Korean War. And then, you know, to have this happen to Theresa like this, after surviving the war, it really didn't make much sense.
They're all survivors of this, like, this wartime in Korea. And so, like, for them to, like, get through something like that, but then suffer this most tragic loss just feels like a fucking kick in the teeth.
Yeah, and because it is.
Yeah.
It's like the worst thing that could have happened to them. So we need to find out where the fuck Joey Sanza is.
Yes.
Like, where is this guy? They find out that he had multiple aliases and he had an extensive record in Florida, mostly violent sexual assaults. So, all right, kids, pack your bags. We're going to Florida.
Yeah, because they say that, like, it was really easy to get multiple identities back in this time because, like, even driver's licenses were made of paper.
Yeah,
they
you
said
could just, like, make them in
You
your
could just
bedroom.
make them. Like, you know what I mean? So, like, do better, past.
I know.
You know what I mean? Someone get in that DeLorean and go back and
We're
fix
here
it.
now. We're being recorded, not just on our, like, everyone's listening to us. Like, be careful what you wish for. So,
but did you say this, that in Florida, like, his criminal record is mostly all sexual assaults?
like, violent sexual assaults.
Yeah. So he has a history of violent sexual assaults, but he's hired as a fucking security guard. How does that happen?
The aliases.
You know, oh, God. It's like,
He's Joey Sanza now, but the aliases, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The world is just a scary place.
It's terrifying.
It's just a scary place.
It's absolutely
and people
terrifying.
can get away with anything.
Yeah. And like in any year, it's bad. I'm sorry to scare you,
I know.
everyone, but like it's
Me
all
especially.
bad. Like, oh my God. So they're, again, this ring, right? They want to find Teresa's ring, and it's very unique. So they're looking at the pawn shops for the ring because they're assuming.
Now, they're from New York, and they keep saying
Pawn shops.
pawn shops, and it really sounds like they're saying porn shops.
shops.
They went and checked every porn shop. I'm like, you guys are checking the wrong stores.
It's But also, there's no way this guy's giving it up. This is a trophy. There's no
100%.
way. If he left the beret and he left the glove, the one thing he has of her, it's not going to be at a pawn shop.
Because
it's
it's a beautiful ring, but it's not worth anything. It's not like it's like a diamond ring. You know what I mean?
But to him, because
it's
these people are fucking fucked up, it's worth everything to him.
Yes.
There's no way he's giving that up.
Yep.
So brick wall after brick wall after brick wall.
And then, 6 months after Teresa's murder, they get another break in the case. Sanza slips up.
Joey Sanza is already wanted in Florida, but he commits an additional rape in Florida and is ultimately apprehended by the Pompano Beach Police Department.
Joey Sanza commits another sexual assault in Florida, and this time he's caught.
Yeah. So detectives go to Florida to interview him. And like the cops are like, we know he's going to try to trick us. And then they say, but
he's
we
a
have...
fucking mastermind. He's just a violent, hateful, cruel person.
I
That's all
know.
he is. Let's stop giving people credit like he's gonna trick us. He's really not.
Like, but I'm like, are you guys okay? Like, what?
Like, what?
So then they say they have like a trick up their sleeves, and basically they sit down with this guy and they show him a picture of the ring.
Yeah.
And they say based on his reaction, they knew he was the guy.
Because he immediately ends the conversation. He gets a lawyer. The lawyer's like, nope, conversation over. Fine, fair enough.
Yeah.
And now the cops are like, great, now we actually have to make a case against him.
Yeah. And so they go back to New York, and while they're in New York building the case, in Florida, this guy is convicted on 12 counts of sexual battery. 12 counts.
And he's sentenced to prison, and he always takes the rings.
So every time he like rapes or sexually assaults a woman, he takes a ring from her either off her body or from like a jewelry box in her house.
Right. So like obviously this is our guy, right?
And they say like this is their theory of what happened to Theresa, that she was walking from the artist space to the Puck building. She entered the area where he was the security guard.
That he was supposed to be guarding,
I know.
Remember?
And he forces her into the basement where he rapes and kills her.
Yeah. And so John, her brother, is here to also just add, like, Theresa knew Tai Chi. So she definitely did fight back. Like, the evidence on her body that the cops were like, well, maybe she fought. John is here to be like, no, she totally did.
She used to do Tai Chi, and I would think that when he was beating her, she probably, tried to deflect the blows with her Tai Chi moves. I mean, this is all my imagination now. And he just went berserk.
She fought back, she used Tai Chi, and then he lost it. Like, John's theory is that Joey Sanza lost it, that she was even fighting back and strangled her. And that's John's theory.
It seems like he hasn't killed before. Like, he's raped people before, but he hasn't killed them.
Right.
Which is why when he got home that night, he was totally fucking freaking out.
Right.
Because this was the first time he'd gone that far.
Like, oh my God. So Sansa goes to trial. And it's a mistrial.
So can I just say one thing here? Because I'm like, wait a second. So he's on trial. Is there no evidence preserved that could be tested with today's technology? And they answer this question because you're right. The first trial is a mistrial. But one of the cops says to us, we learned that there's forensic evidence that was recovered from Theresa's body, but none of it matches him.
Did they say that?
Yes. None of it was able to be conclusively linked to Joey Sansa. So there was forensic evidence recovered, but I don't what I'm not
When
following.
did they test that?
That's what I'm asking. They don't give us any information here. Did they test it forensically then and they just couldn't match it because they didn't have the technology, or was it tested recently? I don't know. But if there's forensic evidence that exists, they should be testing it now.
But they end up convicting him of this, so they don't have to.
I guess. But at the time, I'm just saying, like the evidence doesn't match him. You know what I mean? I think the timeline of him getting the body to the parking lot is kind of not great. I think he did it, and at the very least, he should be in prison for whatever, because he's the fucking worst. Get him off the streets. But, like, I don't know. Like, the evidence doesn't match, and they got it from her body. I have questions there.
All right.
So the first trial is a mistrial. They bring him back for the second trial, and this is where the crazy shit happens.
Yeah.
Because they bring his rape and sexual assault victims from Florida to testify. I cannot imagine the line of questioning that produced this answer.
Yeah.
Because these women...
They testified that Joey Sansa was polite during their rapes. It sounds almost crazy in today's world, but that was their testimony. The local papers dubbed Sansa the gentleman rapist.
The gentleman rapist,
Like,
which makes me...
How is everybody involved in writing a story like that not in prison? I do not... That is unconscionable.
My jaw was on my mouth was wide open. I was like, wait, what? Like, what the fuck are these people thinking? And yeah, I'm sure they just made these women describe in detail everything that he said and did.
Yes.
And then there was probably something where he was just like, oh, excuse me.
Right.
Or what, but he's still doing this violent, horrible,
oh my God,
vile thing to you.
The idea that a lawyer would make these women say something like that is so...
Yeah.
How do you sleep at night?
Oh my God. So, but one of the cops was like, all right, that's somewhat problematic. Yeah, I'll say.
I mean, come on. So the second trial, fucking mistrial again.
Right.
In 1987, he's tried for a third time. This time, a surprise witness emerges.
His girlfriend.
Yeah.
To which I say, his what?
I know.
His who? His girlfriend.
I know.
And she says on the night of the murder or immediately after, Joey called her and said, hey, this time I really screwed up. I actually killed somebody.
Yes.
Screwed up. Does that mean, is that implying that she knew that he was out horribly attacking people and assaulting women?
I know. It seems like it to me.
Like, I really screwed up this time.
Yeah.
Hey, Cheryl, bad news.
I know.
Can't watch Cheers tonight.
In the third trial, he's convicted. He gets 25 years to life. To this day, he is still in prison in Florida for those rapes and assaults. If he ever gets out in Florida, he then comes to New York to serve his 25 to life sentence.
Yeah, so he's fucked.
Bye.
Bye. But this ends in such a beautiful way because we end with John, Theresa's brother. And it ends with him saying,
I'm thankful that she had left behind all this artwork, and it's like she's still here. And I would urge people do more art because that lingers and stays behind and gives, joy to common folks like us.
it stays behind and gives joy to common folks like us.
And I'll tell you, I looked this up, and Berkeley has archived a lot of her art.
Yeah.
They've kept it like in their permanent collection. You can see it. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm going to read this book.
I know, this
she
book sounds
created such
incredible.
amazing works. And you're right about like this series really gave us a picture of
Yeah.
who this person was,
Yeah.
which was really remarkable.
I know. I love that they did that.
Yeah. Thank you, New York Homicide.
Thanks. Look, we're going to be covering more of these. So
Okay,
stay
great.
tuned.
Oh, girl, we did New York Homicide, Slade in Soho. Not
know.
loving the title.
I know. We got to do better with the titles, everybody. How about like her name?
Exactly.
That would be helpful.
Fam, join us on the Patreon. Over 400 full ad-free bonus episodes for you to download right this second.
Right
I
now.
love looking at the Facebook group because people are like going back through and rediscovering
Yeah.
like series and stuff.
I like when I see people saying like, I can't believe I missed this.
I know.
I noticed that I had like an unlistened to podcast and it was this Patreon series that I had never, I forgot that I had.
I know. Obsessed, obsessed, obsessed. What are we doing next, girl?
So there's a series called Death in the Dorms.
Oh.
We are doing the first episode of it, and the episode is titled, take notes, New York Homicide. It's called Andrea Del Vesco.
Thank you.
You know?
All right, well, stay tuned for the funny and hilarious outtakes, maybe.
Oh my God, maybe.
You'll get a little bit more of our 1970s sitcom.
Maybe.
in the outtakes.
Talking about Cheers. Hey, Nam. My Cliff
Nam.
impression. Hey, Nam.
And our outtakes, and we love you.
Okay, we love you so much. See you next week.
All right, bye.
Bye.
While it's wonderful to think that you can leave your doors unlocked, don't.
I woke up because I heard somebody screaming.
Fire paramedic operator 84 at the address of the emergency.
That's 10954. Oh my God.
Okay,
The whole apartment is on fire. We need an ambulance.
It's a visual you don't forget.
Andy,
The guy that you saw run out of there, what direction did you see him running?
he ran to the right.
We found an adult female in the fire.
I was just really scared.
This was an intentional fire. This was a violent death.
We just couldn't believe that someone would have done this to her on purpose.
You got a conscience. Tell us everything.
Okay.
Detectives have two different stories, so who's telling the truth?
They didn't look at a fucking blueprint floor plan.
Do you want to take that whole
Wow.
sentence?
Daisy now will speak Italian to Steve.
Oh, really?
When she wants pizza and she thinks I can't understand because she'll go, Daddy, I want some pasta for dinner.
It's me, Mario.
Yeah. And she literally thinks I can't understand what she's saying. She's like, Daddy, I'm telling Daddy Steve that I want pasta for dinner.
It's offensive.
Daddy, and she does the thing with the hand.
It's Daddy-O! Daisy, you know what? Send her over to me. I'll teach her how to
I
speak.
will.
So November 5th. Wait, who can't you stand in Cheers? You were gonna
I
rant
kind
on
of can't
something.
stand Cheers at all.
I don't like.
I never was into it because it's very Boston-y, sportsy. Like I just wasn't into it.
I fell off. I tried because it's like the greatest. You know, I really, really tried.
The only character I really hated was Frasier, but I loved Lilith.
I hate Frasier too.
He's
I
so
didn't make
boring.
it to Frasier.
Oh,
I haven't
really?
even watched up to Frasier yet. Sam and Diane have broken up and gotten back together like 2 or 3 times. But I was kind of like, Mike, you can watch.
My whole
I
thing
don't
was
need
like, it all takes place in this one room. Like that's so boring.
That's like every sitcom.
I
though.
guess so.